applause for me.
Thank you so much for joining us here. I would love to hear so many things about where you've been and how you dealt with it, because I think it's such a, it seems like it's been years and years and years, but you're so young. How did you initially started in tech? How did that ended up where you did?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. How did it all start? So, as a child, I always wanted to work in advertising. It was somehow my dream back then. I don't know why, but there was kind of this creative industry thing, and I thought that's what I want to do. So I started working in there, and it was a great experience. But I also noticed how, that whole system was a little bit not really how I envisioned my career or my future, because it's also pretty hierarchical and pretty, like, I don't know, pretty old-fashioned kind of way of building companies. So I decided to study organizational psychology afterwards to change the way how people work, to change how organizations are built. And so I saw a lot of opportunity there. And then, I looked after this study into like progressive companies that are doing something different, like with self-organizing teams and stuff like that. And so I looked into Wunderlist and I joined them, I think 2012. And then I helped them hiring their team. And I think it was the best decision to go into the startup ecosystem and to learn a lot and see how teams are growing, and to also create organizations where also the employees participate in the success of the company. I think that's something I think is very important, that employees are kind of owning also the outcome of the business and are not just random employees as a part of the chain somewhere. And I think that's great about startups and the whole ecosystem we are in.
What is one thing maybe that you learned about building this culture, about putting psychology into place? Because it's an interesting combination to really go deep into psychology, understand people's behavior. So what made a difference for you in putting up a corporate culture?
I think first of all, giving people ownership about things and making them like find their own strength and then owning this field and become an expert in that and give them that space. I think if you are in bigger corporations, it's usually kind of your path is pretty planned and you are going to do this for 3 years and then you might grow into this role, but actually this role is taken by someone and it's pretty limited what you can achieve in a short time. So I think in startups you are just able to, I don't know, sometimes you own your own discipline and you can really like make this your thing and then become great in that. I think small teams give you that opportunity. Did I answer that? Did I lost get lost?
No, it's good. It's good. I also wondered because you have somehow, I wouldn't say a similar path, but a similar path with Stefan in terms of you didn't just go full on to one industry. Mm-hmm. You were part of Wunderlist and then you joined Clue before you started your own venture. Mm-hmm. So what was for you initially an attraction towards a product?
Which product you mean?
Like generally, how do you decide which startup to join or what is interesting for you if it's not the industry?
Well, I think for me it was always like I really wanted to meet the founders of the company pretty close, because in HR you kind of have to stand for their values and execute them in a way. And I think I also worked as a freelancer for a long time in HR, and I worked with founders where at some point you just notice I don't really agree with certain things, and then it gets difficult in your role to be authentic and to do a good job and shape or build a nice organization that has values that you are believing in. And so I think for me it was not so much the product, but more the founders behind it and the management team. And I think I would also advise everyone to meet the founders of the company you want to join and make sure they are having some sort of values or vision that you share in your work. You met
your co-founders now at Pitch. when you were back in Wunderlist,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, you're not 2 or 3 people, you're actually 7, right?
8.
8.
Yes.
8 co-founders. How did this initiate? How did you guys come together to, think of the idea and to actually put your hands in a pit and say, okay, we're doing this all as co-founders together?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there was one, the key driver was our CEO who also was the CEO of Wunderlist. So he kind of started it, and we all got together, everyone who was interested back then, from the old team. Some of the old team was busy with other things. Some just had families that were like, no, I don't want to do it. And we were the 8 who were yeah, let's do something new and work together. Because it was, I think all of us learned to, when you build a company, you already get to know the strengths and weaknesses of everyone. So you kind of know what you're buying into when you found a company. And I think that's the essential thing, to have this trust in each other. And I think we were all having this trust, and we would know, okay, let's do this. And we would all know what domain you would own, and to, become great in that, So, I think the trust was the reason why we got together. And 8 people, I think it was just coincidence. It became 8. I think it's been great for us being 8 people, because we've been super fast on starting pitch. We are already 38 people and achieved a lot in just 1.5 years. And I think if you would start with 2 people, where you still have some knowledge gaps, because you don't know everything, obviously. And with 8, we kind of have the whole spectrum in place, and I think that helped us a lot. So I think it's been great, even though it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but I think we found a good way to work together and help each other in what we are doing.
Aside from sort of the trust aspect, which is a very big factor of communication, spending time with 8 people where you have to make sure everybody's on the same page needs some kind of communicational structure, right? Even 3 people get into quarrels. I had one founder tell me that having co-founders is something like your second relationship without the sex. So how do you make sure that you communicate in the way where you don't get into miscommunication, or where you don't get into fights on little simple things or even complex things?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with 8 people, there's a lot of potential for disagreement, but I think because we have pretty clear domains where each of us are kind of owning the decision, we are still consulting the group and making sure everyone buys in. But I think there are some technical decisions where I would have an opinion, but in the end, it's our CTO who's going to make the decision, And I think with other parts of the business, it's the same. If for HR topics, if there's a thing that I think that's how we should do, and the company or the team has a different opinion, we will make sure that we all get on the same page and then execute on this. But in the end, there's someone who owns the decision, and I think having this clear tasks and ownership of who owns what, then it gets a bit easier. But we have regular meetings, we have regular syncs and discuss these topics. It's been pretty chill so far.
I'm very glad. It's quite different to be in a bigger company. So Wunderlist was backed by Microsoft, and Clue is also doing amazingly. But starting your own startup is a daunting thing. You take much more risk. You not always know how it's going to go, where it's going to go. Taking decision it's much more daunting. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure you stay confident? Where do you find your motivation? What was that thing that attracted you to actually have your own startup rather than going again to another corporate?
So first, I think after working with a lot of interesting, differently founders, you kind of learn. If you join a startup and you work for other founders, you kind of always try to fix their stuff for them, and you're not really sometimes don't have much of a impact on the result, because like it's in the end the DNA of the company that's already kind of built through the founders. So I think for me it was interesting to start a business from scratch and be part of like maybe a better solution. I don't think we do everything right, and I don't think there's something perfect in every case, but I think to own the outcome from the beginning and be part of like building an organization was always the thing I wanted to do. Yeah.
What's the thing that sort of was different for you in your field, so in HR, from being at companies that you didn't co-found to now having this topic in a setting where you are the co-founder and you're making the last decision?
Can you repeat the question?
I was wondering, like, HR-wise, so you're building teams, you're deciding how to set up the culture, how the communication is going to go on, how do you motivate the people inside of it. Was there a difference from now doing this at Pitch than to the companies where you weren't a co-founder?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, when you join a company that's already established, I don't know, they have 30 people, and you come in and start handling HR topics, then you're trying to pick up the pieces everywhere and try to make sense of what are the policies, what's going on, what's going well and what's not. And I think it's super interesting to do that, but I think just starting from scratch and planting the seed from the beginning to make things maybe right or hopefully, I think that was it's a big difference, yeah, when you're thinking about making more structural decisions like in the beginning rather than fixing diversity after being 80 people and having 2 women in it. Like these type of things we started to think about super early, and to not forget that sometimes it's too late to do that and fix it. Yeah. So I think, yeah.
That's a good answer. What was sort of the most important things in terms of culture that you thought were very necessary to pay attention to, or you're still paying attention to when you're building now the culture of Pitch?
Well, obviously diversity, that's a thing you have to think about as a tech company always very early, because it's kind of natural that you hire all these male engineers and you are 20 guys and maybe one, I don't know, designer. So I think that was a big challenge from the beginning to make sure that we create a hiring process that gives also women a chance, even though they are in like minority numbers usually, like to give it, to make an effort to also find a female candidate in this role and not just hire the men who's like just there. And it usually takes more time to find alternatives to like the obvious hires. And so doing that, and then also like thinking about power dynamics early on to make sure, I don't know, what type of company do we want to be, what are the power structures do we want to create all these manager layers in it, or how do we solve it without having managers? Like, I mean, all these things were important for us from the beginning. Yeah.
In terms of diversity, what do you do to attract female candidates? Do you look into the language of how you communicate it? Do you actively sort of reach out? How do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there are these websites where on like these new things where you can maybe check your job description in terms of the language and how, in what way could it be exclusive for female or other people, and so just having more consciousness around how you write and formulate job descriptions is important. And then thinking about posting the job maybe on platforms that are more diverse and paying more attention to diversity, and not the most obvious one where maybe just the guys would look at. And then be more active in these communities to have more visibility in that. And then I think, for us, I think I always want to have the rule, if we have 2 guys in the pipeline, I want to have at least 1 or 2 women as an alternative. And that takes time and makes the hiring process slower, but I think it's important to have these like subconscious targets to at least have different options to choose, yeah.
Do you think there is a different approach, or do you necessarily yourself take a different approach to help women sort of scale up in their career? Because guys tend to go straight on even if they don't necessarily know how to, but we've noticed that women tend to either shy out or overthink it. So do you take a different approach to, you know, push them forward?
At pitch, no?
Yeah, even before, from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, so at pitch, I think we are extremely mindful to have, even though we are also not doing amazingly great in diversity, but I think if we have like now managers, that at least a few women are also manager roles, and then you kind of like approach also deliberately also the females in the company. How do you think about it? Would you like to do this maybe one day, and to really have more direct conversations in the team and with individuals around it? And I think at the moment that's all we can do right now, but I think in general, yeah, having good one-on-ones and help people, or not just females but individuals, to believe in themselves and think and support them in thinking abroad their own strength. I mean, to make them realize maybe they could do it and maybe they would be great, and just inspire them a little bit.
So being an entrepreneur can be a 24/7 job. It's like double the project that you want to do because your heart and soul is in there. How do you make sure that you unwind? What do you do for, you know, taking a breath and balancing out also your personal life? What do you do also for pleasure on the side to regain energy?
I love traveling, so I'm traveling a lot. Our company is also remote optimized, so all of us are traveling a lot and working from wherever, and I think that's also the future, or like at least for pitch. So I think traveling is important, seeing different places and cultures, and just being somewhere else is nice. I have a dog, and this dog is also face of pitch. No, having a dog is also a lot of responsibility. So I have to go on many walks. So that helps me to balance out my head. I guess having dog walks in the morning and at night, quite settling. Yeah.
So I assume that's sort of maybe half the answer to my next question, but I wanted to ask, how do you deal with doubt? How do you deal with moments where you feel insecure, where you don't feel as confident? How do you boost yourself up? Is there something that you do that lifts you up maybe?
I think when there are moments where you're not sure about like how to approach a problem, I think I usually try to remember difficult passages in my life and think about how this kind of worked out, and how you dealt with certain things. And I think reminding yourself that you went through stuff already and probably made good decisions, and that gives you, like, at least myself sometimes, strength to believe the next decision will probably also be good or work out in some way. So I think believing in yourself and following your gut feeling, I think that always helps me, and like boosting myself. I don't know how I boost myself.
Or how do you build up your confidence? What do you think was sort of the initiator to bringing you up where you were? Because I mean, you've had incredible roles, you are doing now this incredible startup, but you started out as a young girl, as everybody here in this room, where maybe you did not feel as confident. So what did you do to make sure you put one foot in front of the other uphill?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm from a family, my mom was sick when I was younger, so I didn't really have this strong role model from my mom's side. So I kind of had to do or take the decisions for myself and stand behind what I want to do. And I think when I left home, I was 18, I just went to LA and didn't know what's going to happen, but I was always like, somehow it's going to work. And I never had anyone who like told me this is good, you should do it. I kind of had to motivate myself to like just follow what I want to do, and I think this gave me the strength or the confidence to just follow my stubborn head.
Stubbornness sometimes also helps because you don't overthink it, no?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I asked this to everybody so far, but do you feel like you're ambitious? Or do you think you're ambitious?
I guess, to some degree, yeah. Or probably, yeah. I don't know, I think I wouldn't label myself, if you would ask me, I don't know, I wouldn't label myself ambitious, but I guess I am, yeah.
What do you think makes you think that you don't necessarily want to put it as a label, or what is the thing that sort of drags it a bit behind?
I think for me, ambitious, I don't know why, but I think I'm not one of these self-improving, sporty, high energy people. I think that's why, but I think ambition is something great. And I think for me, I think what my heart is probably thinking about ambition is more about like challenging the status quo and changing what you want to change and just follow it and really do it. And I think that's what I'm doing. And if that's ambitions, then I am, I guess, yeah.
That is ambition, definitely. I think everybody has and should have their own way of looking into ambition, as long as it, gives them a boost to go forward.
Yeah.
I think so. So if you could go back in time and talk to your young version of yourself, your 16-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Yeah, I think I've always been this intuition person, and I think follow your intuition and your gut. I think if you do that, as long as you do that, I think everything will work out somehow. And I think following your feelings, I think that's the most important thing. If you do what you love doing, and if you can stand behind what you're doing, I think then there's no way that it can fail. Yeah.
Does that also correlate to sort of figuring out your own personal values early on, I suppose?
Yeah.
What are your values?
My own values, like work-wise, or?
Is there that difference for you?
Yeah, I need to think. So my values, I think being honest and having integrity, I think that always has been important for me. Being honest and transparent, I think those are very important values for me in friendship, relationship, workship, anything. What else? I think those are very important, yeah.
I think those then correlate, no? I mean, you pursued psychology and HR. As much as it is personal, you've taken it with you also professionally, no?
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Thank you so much for all of this. I would love to give you guys the opportunity to ask more questions right now. So I'm gonna step down, not outside. But please give her a warm applause for this wonderful conversation first. Okay, everyone, who wants to ask anything? Especially those that are building something? Okay. To you too.
I have a question. When you made the step from like working from a stable job to going to co-founding Pitch, how did you make that jump? Because did you guys work on it as a side project in the beginning, and then did the founders have some funding or something like that?
So the whole funding team was part of Wunderlist before, who was acquired by Microsoft in 2015. So we didn't really have much financial problems at that time. So we already had a good seed funding when we started, because of investors who believed in that team. And so we were in a pretty fortunate situation that we were funded from the beginning, and so we could start from scratch, but we didn't pay us big salaries, but we were able to pay salaries to everyone who joined and who got hired. So I think that put us in a great place. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for sharing the insights. My question is, I have two questions. The first one is about your role in HR. You mentioned that you your role is to share the vision and the mission of the founders. And I wanted to know, like, what are your strategies for doing that? How do you communicate this to new employees? My second question is in regards to your product. Like, I'm very curious about your product, and I wanted to know, like, what really differentiates Pitch from any other knowledge-sharing platform. Thanks.
Okay, so question first was how do we communicate the vision to the employees and make sure that like new people get also onboarded, right? Well, I mean, so I think we kind of see our values being part of our daily work. So I think everything we decide, and no matter if it's about how do we set up teams and how do we communicate internally, how do we communicate in meetings, all of that reflects our company values. So and I think, yeah, we kind of started them after we were already working for a year together. So we kind of did it with the team together. So it was an organic definition process of that. So we didn't really define them in the beginning and thought, oh, this sounds great. Let's put this as a company value. We really wanted them to be like part of what our team also thinks are our values as a company. So they were part of the foundation and part of the definition process. And in terms of new employees, I mean, when people get onboarded at Pitch, we have this onboarding week. You go through like meeting people and seeing, like, we have this big knowledge like basis and Notion. So all of our information, everything is like stored in Notion, and everyone can read through that, and that's where they read through it. I'm making sure that like I have a check-in with the people and talk about these things and make sure they understand it, and maybe they have questions, and yeah, that's kind of how we do it with new people. And the second question was about the product, right? How it differentiates. So I can't say so much yet because we are not on the market and we don't want to spoil. But there are a few things that are making us like big differentiators. Like, I mean, if you look at because you said we are a knowledge-based, knowledge platform, right? That's what you said, yeah. So we are probably going to be one facet of this, yes, but we are mainly like a presentation software, so people should share their visions with Pitch. And so if you look at old or like the usual presentation software, it's usually not a great experience to build a presentation, I guess, for most of you as well, right? Is it fun? No, so it will change. So yeah, it's going to be like the whole process on collaborating on presentation will change, and having live data, having like smart layouts and stuff like that. All of this will be so much different than what we used to know about it. So I think, yeah, you will find out more soon, since we hired our first market CMO, so we will be much more vocal in the community soon, and then you will hear it all.
Anybody else?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to ask, do you think a person would work better in a teamwork or an individual? And if as a teamwork, do you think like you have to combine people who have the same skills and abilities, or you have always to look at the kind of personalities of the people that you're going to work with? Thank you.
Yeah, I think individuals always work better, and I think usually work better in a team, because you kind of have different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences. So yes, I think teamwork is probably the best way if you build a big product. And I think teams need to be set up super diverse, and I'm not speaking about gender diversity, I mean diversity in backgrounds and perspectives, experiences and stuff. And if you want to build a global product, I think it needs to have diverse teams in order to, yeah, just build a product that everyone can use. And otherwise it's going to be, you kind of build it for yourself and you don't know what the user really wants. yeah.
Anyone else? You're good? Okay. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for the talk.
Que la famille.